Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is match day. Arsenal's first game in the Champions League in 2024-25 is in about 12 hours' time. At the time of recording this, Arsenal, of course, kicking things off against Atalanta over in Bergamo a little bit later on today. So we are going to be talking about that big game later. Of course, we'll go through my predicted 11 for that game. Lots of you guys have been getting in touch, giving your thoughts on what Mikel Arteta should or shouldn't do ahead of the game. So I'll pull some of those together. We'll look at what Mikel was talking about yesterday in his press conference in terms of who could potentially be starting, the latest team news, his thoughts on Atalanta. And of course, we're going to have to start by talking about the big news, the confirmation, unfortunately, of Martin Odegaard's injury. As I was saying yesterday, the feeling I was getting down at the training ground ahead of the game yesterday was we were going to hear something pretty bad from Mikel Arteta later on in the day on Odegaard. And we did. No other way of putting it, really. We did hear something bad from Mikel Arteta. It's not wholly unexpected. I think we all probably thought this was going to be the case when it came to Odegaard. The longer it went on, yes, Mikel was playing a bit of a game ahead of the game against Tottenham, obviously, when he was refusing to rule him out for that game. He couldn't do that. He could only do that for one game, really. And then he was going to have to sort of open up on it more. And he chose to do it ahead of yesterday's game. And he gave the confirmation of the fact that it was a pretty serious injury for Martin. He said after everything was scanned, they showed that there was some damage, especially in one of the ligaments in the ankle. So we're going to miss him. I don't want to put a time frame on it because I'm not a doctor, but it is something quite significant. So we're going to lose him for a while. Hopefully not months, but let's see. And look, Mikel's never going to put a proper timeline on this. He never does really when it comes to injuries. He leaves it a little bit open on it. But I would suggest it's going to be a while. I'm not sure it's going to be weeks. I think it might be a little bit longer than that. I mean, what are we now? 19th of September. We've got the international break coming up fairly soon. We're still in October when you come back from that international break. I'd be surprised if we see him before November, personally, but we'll have to wait and see on that. You never know. He might be a really quick healer. One thing you know about Martin, he's going to put absolutely everything into his rehab. He's not going to miss a thing. He's going to be there on time, all the time, getting all the rehab he needs, probably putting in extra work as well to try and get himself back fit and back available for the team. And that might help. Sometimes you do get very quick healers and sometimes you get slower healers, and let's just hope, fingers crossed, that Martin falls into that former category there of being a really quick healer and we can get to see him back. I mean, it's going to be very interesting how Arsenal cope, obviously, without Martin. Now he's the captain, he's the guy who leads the press. The whole team is basically built around Martin. He's got such a huge influence on how everything happens. And I think we're going to see a very different Arsenal team in his absence. I don't think there's any doubt about that. You know, someone else is going to have to lead the press. Someone else is going to have to provide all that sort of creativity. You can't get like for like replacement. It's impossible because Martin Odegaard's a bit of a one-off. So I think Arsenal are going to have to change their way of playing a little bit. They are probably going to have to fall back and be more defensive maybe than usual and be even more tight. You know, what we saw against Tottenham at the weekend, and other people are going to have to step up in his absence and provide maybe not the same level of creativity and guile, but they're going to have to still step up and produce some of that in his absence and find a way to win and win regularly, week in, week out, in his absence. I mean, Mikel was talking about it yesterday when he was asked if he's confident he's got players who can fill in for Odegaard while he's absent. He said yes, but we have to show that. He's our captain. He's one of our biggest players. He's been one of the most consistent players in the last 2 or 3 seasons. Our identity is very related to his way of playing and his way of behaving. We're going to have to deal with his absence, and that's a great test for the team as well, how capable we are to show maybe a different face. The fact is, we have other players and other options that can be very effective. Now, he's absolutely right in that, but I think this is the only message you can send out. Mikel will know how big a blow this is. Absolutely. He will know, you know, of all the players, I think at the start of the season, I said it, and I'm sure pretty much everyone else would agree, that if there was one player who you thought would probably be the most costly miss if he was out because of the squad, because of who could come in, I think Martin Odegaard was the one player you really felt like Arsenal couldn't do without. You were just fingers crossed you were hoping he was going to get through the season unscathed like he did relatively last season. That hasn't happened. And so Arsenal now, you can feel sorry for yourselves or you can just find a way to win. They did that at the weekend against Spurs. They're going to be boosted, obviously, by the return of some players. Now we've got Declan Rice back. Mikel Merino hopefully won't be too long after the next international break as well to add into that midfield. We're going to have to see more of Ethan Nwaneri, you would think, over the course of the next few weeks. Can he step up and really, be that spark at times that we hope and think he might well be able to provide? Yes. And, if you want to win titles, most of the time you're going to have to go through parts of the season where you're struggling, where your squad is struggling. I think back to 1998, 97, 98 when Arsenal won the double and we lost Ian Wright early on in the season. It started really well. We'd broken the goal scoring record, Cliff Baston's record, and then he got an injury and he was out for about 3 months. And who was there? 18-year-old Nicolas Anelka. Hadn't scored a goal for Arsenal before Wright got injured. Came into the team, had a tough start, but then he grew into the season, scored that goal against Man United in the 3-2 win, and then had a really, really good season and, was Arsenal's star striker by the end of that season. You've got players to step up. Now, Anelka, maybe he was a bit of a one-off. Obviously, he was such a huge talent. But at the time when Wright got that injury, no one knew he was going to be the sort of player that he was. But he stepped up when he was needed. And there's so many other examples of that happening during the seasons if teams are going to go on and win the title. Look at Man City last season. Yes, I know City's squad's unbelievable and they've spent so long building it. But they had to do without Kevin De Bruyne for a long, long time last season in that first half season. They struggled at times. They lost a fair few games. It wasn't until he came back that they then had that amazing second half of the season. But they still managed to get through that period, yes, by losing a few games or drawing a few games that you wouldn't have expected them to drop points in. But they still managed to hang in there until he came back. And that's what Arsenal are just going to have to do now. Otherwise, you feel sorry for yourself, you lose a few games and bang, the season's pretty much done and dusted. And you can't afford to do that. And Arsenal have still got a very, very good squad. So I thought the message that Arteta sent out in that second answer was probably the only message he could do. He couldn't sit there and feel sorry for himself. He had to say, we've still got the players to cope. And ultimately, this is going to be such a key moment for Arsenal now. How do you deal without the skipper, the player who dictates the way you play? Can you cope or not? Are you good enough to cope or not? And ultimately, the answer is we're going to watch the answer unfold on our TV screens or on the pitch in the next few weeks. And hopefully, fingers crossed, the players can step up and deliver in his absence. First up, they're going to have to do that. And that is today, obviously, tonight against Atalanta in the Champions League. And Arsenal need to get off to a good start in this campaign. Really tricky side to play against. Obviously, last year's Europa League winners, fantastic side, scored lots of goals at times. Hammered Liverpool at Anfield 3-0 last season on the way to winning the Europa League. Just a really, really strong, decent team. Good news for Arsenal. Obviously, Ricardo Calafiori is back. Bukayo Saka's fine. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see some pictures there of Calafiori heading to the plane to make the flight to Italy. You can see him and Saka together on the training pitch yesterday at London Colney. So two players who there were little doubts over. Obviously, Calafiori missed the Spurs game with that injury he picked up on international duty. Saka limps off against Spurs, but both are available. And that's a big, big boost for Arsenal in terms of the latest team news. Obviously, we know there's no Alexander Zinchenko. Marino, Tierney, Tomiyasu, all those players are still unavailable from the team that played against Spurs at the weekend. It's just Calafiori and Rice that are back available. But great to have Calafiori back. I think he might well start this game, to be honest, now. But really good to have him back. And, hopefully he'll be able to tell a lot of secrets in terms of what Atalanta are like. It's going to be a really interesting game. Atalanta captured a lot of our hearts, I think, the way they played last season in the Europa League, the football that they played, the goals that they scored, the attacking intent that they showed. And they were so good in the final against Leverkusen, of course, inflicting Leverkusen's only defeat of the season. They were brilliant as they hammered Liverpool at Anfield as well on the way to it. Gasparini's just done fantastic things. Legendary manager, of course. Mikel has been speaking about him in the build-up to tonight's game on Atalanta's playing style. He said, the club has an amazing story, and what Gasparini has done is amazing. I have big admiration for what he has done in his career, not only for Atalanta, but for other clubs. He's a very important figure, and what they achieved last season was incredible, and we'll see how tomorrow goes. He said it's very difficult to play against them. They have a particular playing style, which you see week in, week out. It's very challenging for opponents coming up against them. The last two seasons, the Premier League has changed a lot, and you've got a lot of squads that are doing similar things to them, and we need to be prepared ahead of tomorrow. In terms of what sort of team they might face, he said, look, I spoke to Ricardo and Jorginho. They know the team very well. They know the players, and it's always very important to get information to get hold of. They've played in some great games against the squad during the last few seasons, and they've done very well. So it's gonna be a tricky game. It's a massive night for Atalanta. It's a small stadium. It's only about 24,000, I think, but it's going to be absolutely rocking. It's a huge night for the club. They're going to be really, really up for it. They've had a mixed start to the season in Serie A. They've won 2, lost 2, scored 8, conceded 8. So it's been an inconsistent start to the season for them. They do score goals, but they can concede goals as well. For Arsenal, it's just a big challenge, really, because their away form in European football hasn't been great. They don't win too many games away from home. It's very hard to win away from home in Europe. It doesn't matter who you're coming up against or where you're playing. It is just very difficult. Wins away from home are always a really good thing to do. And Arsenal have struggled at times, and they're going to have to show that they can win these tricky away games. If they want to go deep into this competition, which they do, and they believe they can, then they're going to have to win these types of games against these types of teams. And you just want to get off to a good start. Absolutely want to get off to a good start when it comes to the Champions League. Get some points on the board early doors, especially in this new format, and then see where you are as it progresses. So big game for Arsenal, and I'm not expecting too many changes. I have to say, this is what Mikel said ahead of the game. There's been talk on, are we going to rotate 6 or 7 players because of the Manchester City game on Sunday, and because there's a quick turnaround because you're playing in Italy on Thursday night, going to Manchester on Sunday. Mikel was asked if he's going to rotate, and he says no. We are in September, so we have to put the players that we believe are the best to win tomorrow. That's the most important and only thing for us. And he was asked whether it's disadvantage ahead of Manchester City playing on Thursday night. He said, hopefully not. We have so much energy from what happened on Sunday. It was great. We have recovered a few players as well, which is very important for us. And we're playing in a competition that we absolutely love. So we're looking at the positives. Mikel's very, very keen ahead of Spurs not to use injuries and suspensions as an excuse. And I think he's very, very keen ahead of this game and the City game not to use the scheduling as an excuse. I'm pretty sure that secretly behind the scenes he's fuming at it, but I think he's being he's really determined, not in front of the cameras anyway, to sort of leave it as an excuse and to sort of send that message out inadvertently to his players that they're going to be struggling a little bit in terms of the scheduling. But I'm sure behind the scenes he is very, very angry, but I don't think he's going to make too many changes, I have to say. So this is my predicted 11. I've been sort of going to and fro a little bit when I've been trying to work out what I think Mikel might do. So this is what I'm predicting. This isn't necessarily what I want for tonight, but this is what I think Mikel's going to go for. So Raya in goal. I'm going for White, Saliba, Gabriel, obviously. I think he might go with Calafiori. I was thinking Kivior earlier on in the week, but Calafiori hasn't missed that much football. He was fit. He was playing games before. He played in the international break, got the injury, he missed the Spurs game, but he's back now. I don't think fitness is going to be an issue, and I think the fact that he can play over in Italy and he knows this Atalanta team very, very well, I've got a feeling we might see him for sort of 60, 70 minutes. I don't think we'll see Timber. I think Timber will be rested ahead of the Man City game, but I wouldn't be surprised if Calafiori comes in. So that's the back four I'm predicting that Mikel's going to go with tonight. White, Saliba, Gabriel and Calafiori. I think then he plays Jorginho in the holding role and he rests Partey ahead of the City game. Rice obviously will come back in. I think Havertz will continue to play in that sort of midfield stroke forward role. He'll rotate with the forward as he did in that match against Spurs. So I'm going Jorginho, Rice and Havertz. I think he'll start Saka just because it's Saka and Mikel always starts Saka. So I was wondering earlier on in the week, I was like, is he going to play Sterling? Is he going to give Saka a bit of a rest, especially after he limped off against Spurs? But the closer I've got to this game, the more I start to think, he's going to play Saka. So big game, and he'll play Saka. He always plays him in the big games. I think Martinelli on the left as well, and I'm going Jesus up front, so a rest for Trossard. Although it wouldn't surprise me if maybe Trossard plays on the left and Martinelli gets a bit of a rest. I mean, he might even do Sterling on that side as well. So that's the predicted 11. I'm sure it's probably going to be wrong, but that's what I'm going for tonight's game. So Raya, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, Jorginho, Havertz, Rice, Saka, Jesus and Martinelli. Now, this is what you guys have been saying. Lots of you have been sending in your thoughts and opinions ahead of the game and who should start. So I'll go through some of these right now. We've got Spags at the top there. He says, I think it's finally time for Arteta to put his money where his mouth is and rotate the starting 11 more regularly. Now he has the strong options. I'd be excited to see Sterling, Jesus, Wanyeri, Calafiori and Rice returning for Atalanta. You can't say that's not a strong lineup, and surely we want to keep everyone sharp. I want to see our exciting squad put to use. Carlo says, I think the 11 will be Raya, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, Jorginho, Rice, Havertz, Saka, Martinelli, Jesus. I think that's the same one I've just gone for, isn't it, Carlo? Aaron says, hey, Charles, I think we should go with our strongest members for both games against Atalanta and City this week. I disagree with the opinion that we should rest some players because both teams we are facing is a hell of a difficult team to face. After the City game, we still have games every 3 or 4 days, but the opponents are Bolton, then Leicester and Southampton. I think Mikel will surely rotate players during that period if players begin to return from injuries. If we finish the Atalanta game early, like 3-0 during the first half, I don't think that's going to happen. That would be, although I hope it does. There will also be a chance to rotate players during the game. Mikel's definitely right to say it's still September, so there's no need for rotation. And then we got I can't pronounce your name, I'm afraid there. Langer down the bottom says it's a pity that Zinni is injured. Yes, it is. This would have been a good game to play him at left back and Calafiori at centre back. With that in mind, I'd play Raya, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, Rice, Jorginho, Trossard, Sterling, Havertz, and Jesus. And then just a few more here. One from Rob, who says, regarding the starting 11 for tonight, I'm making 4 changes from the Spuds game. Calafiori for Timber, Jesus for Havertz as he looked exhausted from his work on Sunday, Sterling for Saka, and Rice for Partey. By making those changes, is the team that much weaker? You said that we wouldn't start Ethan because it's a big game. So was Spuds, but he looked completely comfortable out there in that time he had. So I wouldn't be that surprised to see him start tonight, especially with the Odegaard news. We might really need Ethan over the coming weeks. I think we will. Definitely. I'm expecting to see a lot of Ethan. I'm hoping to see a lot of Ethan. Like you said, I was really impressed by the way he seemed to just slot into that Spurs game. Wasn't overawed. I never thought he would be, but he wasn't overawed. We've never seen him look overawed whenever he has had some sort of game time with the players, whether that be competitively or in pre-season. So yeah, I wouldn't be stunned if he plays tonight. I don't think he will, but I wouldn't be stunned if he gets in that starting 11. Frederick says, I agree with you, Charles. Rest Partey and Jorginho plays alongside Rice. Calafiori knows Italian football. He replaces Timber. Saka to play a maximum of 60 minutes, and then Sterling comes in. Dan says Rice in for Partey. Partey will likely start against City, and Jorginho has loads of Serie A experience. Bring in Calafiori for Timber. Don't break him. Start Saka, but replace early with Sterling. Try get Havertz off early too. All depends on whether Arsenal can score early and dominate. And finally, from Gordon, says, hi, Charles. I kind of agree with most of the comments. 3 changes for me. Sterling for Saka, as he didn't have much of a break in the summer. Rice in for Partey, and Kivior in for Timber. So that's what you guys have been saying ahead of the game, or some of you guys. Thank you very much for getting involved. As always, I'll be back tomorrow in the morning. I'm going to be sitting down doing the morning show with James Benge. We haven't been able to do any extra time this week, so our extra time is going to be tomorrow's main show. We're going to get together early doors in the morning, give our reactions to last night's game, and that will be our usual sort of time tomorrow. If you want to get involved in tomorrow's show, give me your thoughts on tonight's game. I'm not going to do a ratings video after the game because it's going to be very, very late after the game tonight. But so come back, reply to this video after full time. Give me your thoughts on the game, what you've seen. Give me your thoughts ahead of the Manchester City game as well. And I'll pull some of them together and get them included in tomorrow's Inside Arsenal Extra Time with myself and James Benge. Until then, have a very good day, everyone. Enjoy the game later. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.